Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Ashmit Kumar and here are the headlines that we're tracking this evening. Sensex and Nifty end in the red after a late sell-off. Banks and IT stocks lead the declines. Reliance Industries signs a binding agreement with Disney to merge their media operations in India, as per a Bloomberg report. Suggests that Reliance's media units and affiliates to own at least 61% in the merged entity. Reports suggest that Reliance is also considering acquiring Tata Plea, where Disney owns a minority stake. The board of Vodafone Idea is set to meet tomorrow to consider the fundraising proposal. Sources tell CNBC-TV18 that promoter Aditya Birla Group is likely to infuse funds via the preferential route. However, the group's listed entities Grasim or Hindalco are unlikely to participate. Sources say that lenders favour referring Jaiprakash Associates to the Company Law Tribunal for resolution under IBC. ICICI Bank, one of the key lenders, has told NCLT that no settlement talks with the company were ongoing. Jaiprakash Associates owes over 29,000 crore rupees, including interest, to 22 lenders. In a relief for SpiceJet, aircraft lessor Celestial Aviation to withdraw insolvency application against the airline. SpiceJet informs NCLT that the $30 million payment dispute with the lessor has been settled outside the court. Ministers from 160 nations gather in Abu Dhabi for a crucial meeting of the World Trade Organization. India seeks a resolution on public stockholding of agri-products. Other flashpoints include limiting subsidies on fisheries and regulating online commerce. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said negotiations have reached an understanding on the contours of a potential ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu said a ceasefire would only delay Israel's planned assault on Rafah. Senior Hamas official Sami Abu Zuri says that Netanyahu's comments cast doubts over Israel's willingness to secure a ceasefire deal. Russia-Ukraine war enters a third year. Russian army launches attack drones and missiles targeting Kharkiv and Dnipro. Zelensky claims close to 31,000 Ukrainian troops have died since the beginning of the war. Ukrainian defense minister says that the country was losing territory because 50% of weapons promised by Western partners failed to reach on time. Reliance Foundation launches Vantara, touted to be the world's largest zoo and India's first of its kind animal rescue and rehabilitation center at the conglomerate's Jamnagar refinery complex. RIL director Anant Ambani, who spearheads the program, tells Network 18 that the zoo has more than 100 species of animals and a dedicated team of 3,000 people to manage it. Well, let's begin with the day's market action. Sensex and Nifty ended in the red after a volatile session. Stocks remained largely steady for most part of the day, but a late sell-off caught the bulls off guard. Sensex lost over 350 points and the Nifty lost 90 points. Banks and IT stocks, meanwhile, led the declines. The mid-caps also fell in tandem with the blue chips. Now, Reliance Industries has signed a binding agreement with Disney to merge their media operations in India. As per a Bloomberg report, Reliance's media units and affiliates are likely to own at least 61% in the merged entity. Vamakshi Dhora is standing by with more details.
Well, yes, a report from Bloomberg suggested that Reliance Industries and Disney had signed a binding merger pact. This is for the merger of the media operations in India. Now, this deal is likely to be announced earlier this week, is what the reports were suggesting. However, CNBC-TV18 has not verified this report independently. Let's also look at the potential ownership structure that is possible. Reports are suggesting that RIL's media unit and its affiliates could own at least 61% in the merged entity, while the remaining portion could be held by Disney. But keep in mind that this stake split could actually change going ahead, depending on how Disney's other local assets are factored into the transaction. Now, let's also look at the valuation picture. Valuations seem to have taken a very sharp knock. A very recent report by Wall Street Journal suggested that the deal could actually value in Disney's India operations at $3.9 billion or 32,000 crore rupees. But in October, reports were suggesting that RIL had valued Disney's India operations between 7 to 8 billion, while during the same period, Disney had valued these operations at almost $10 billion. So definitely a sharp knock stock is what we're seeing as far as the valuations are concerned. But there's another news flow. Reports are also suggesting that RIL is also mulling over the acquisition of Tata Play Limited, which is a broadcast service provider. Now keep in mind that Disney already has a minority stake in this very company.
Well, standard disclaimer, Network 18 and TV18, the companies that operate CNBC-TV18, are controlled by India Media Trust, of which RIL is the sole beneficiary. Well, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will be meeting the heads of fintech companies today. This development comes on the back of the ongoing issues with Paytm Payments Bank. Top fintech players including Amazon Pay, Zerodha, Lending Cart, Pine Labs, among others, will be a part of this meeting. Paytm, however, will not be a part of this meeting. Well, speaking of regulatory issues in the startup space, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs is likely to come out with recommendations for larger unlisted startups within 3 months. Shivani Bajaj joining us now with more details. Shivani, take us through the possible recommendations.
Well, absolutely. Amid the concerns at several big startups like Byju's and Paytm Payments Bank, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs is addressing concerns raised by regulators, and sources have told CNBC-TV18 that the Company Law Committee is expected to come up with recommendations for larger unlisted startups in the next 3 months. The Company Law Committee, also called the CLC, under MCA, is working on a report considering a new definition and proposing additional checks and balances for significant startups based on factors like net worth, capital raised and turnover. Now, sources also say that the report will highlight provisions to enhance controls for investors and board directors. Sources also tell CNBC-TV18 that MCA has asked ROC to expedite the inspection in the case of edtech startup Byju's. Remember, CNBC-TV18 had reported last year that MCA is looking to enhance the regulatory framework for mature startups by the way of mandating quarterly reports submission for better regulation. Sources now say that ICAI and ICSI are also being asked to provide feedback for these upcoming regulations. Back to you.
Right, Shivani, thanks a lot for that. Here's a CNBC-TV18 exclusive. Vodafone Idea's fundraising plan is unlikely to see participation from any listed company of the Aditya Birla Group. However, we learned from sources that the promoter group is expected to infuse funds via a preferential share route. The Vodafone Idea board is set to meet tomorrow to discuss this issue. Nisha Podar joining us now with more details. Nisha.
That's right. As investors of Vodafone Idea gear up to watch out for the board meet on 27th of February, where the board is going to take up the big fundraising plan by the company. All eyes are on that, but some important details coming out on this. First is an important clarification from at least 2 independent sources with direct knowledge of the developments there, and they have shared with CNBC-TV18 that none of the listed companies of Aditya Birla Group like Hindalco or Grasim, which own stake in Vodafone Idea, are likely to participate in the fundraising plan of Vodafone Idea. So it's an important clarification here. I would like to mention that the group had emphatically stated to the investors of rights issue of Grasim also that none of that proceeds are going to go to telecom venture. And on the other hand, there were some analyst speculations regarding the Hindalco's Novelis value unlocking by US listing could also lead to some funding for Vodafone Idea. And my sources do clarify that none of this is likely to happen. In fact, a large fundraise plan by the company is being charted out, which could be a combination and could be completed in the next few months is what I gather. Here, another important aspect to note is that the promoter entity and sources indicate that Aditya Birla Group is likely to infuse funds as part of the large fundraising plan. Now, remember, a few months back last year, the Vodafone Idea had shared that promoters could infuse 2,000 crore rupees for their capital requirements. Now, capital requirement is huge for this telecom firm when it comes to repaying government dues and also for capex requirements. So at the moment, Vodafone Idea as well as Aditya Birla Group, when reached out, did not offer any comment on the plans for the fundraise. So all eyes on that particular board meeting.
Well, here's another CNBC-TV18 exclusive. Sources have told us that lenders have favoured referring Jaiprakash Associates to the Company Law Tribunal for resolution under the IBC. Ritu Singh joining us now with more details. Ritu, what are your sources telling you?
Well, it's been 5 years and counting, but there's been no resolution in the Jayaprakash Associates matter, with a lot of back and forth about a potential settlement, talks of a restructuring, other ways to resolve the debt. However, we've now been given to understand that the lead lender, ICICI Bank, has indicated to courts that there are no talks of settlement with the borrower, and we understand that the bank is now in favor of an NCLT-led resolution for the company under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. Remember, the bank had first taken JP Associates to NCLT in 2018, but there had then been talks of some sort of settlement. During the course of the hearings in NCLT, the company had indicated very recently that it is in talks with lenders for this settlement, but that seems to not have found any favor with the lenders. Banks have been in talks with the National Asset Reconstruction Company, or NARCL, also in parallel for a potential sale of the account, but progress on that front has also been slow. So now the views seems to be converging. Even SBI had earlier filed a plea in the courts against JPA in 2022 to expedite the process. So now it looks like all roads are leading to NCLT for Jayaprakash Associates. This is a key account for the lenders. Remember, there's 29,000 odd crores of debt involved across 22 banks led by ICICI Bank, SBI and others.
Right, Ritu, thanks a lot for that. Now, in a relief for SpiceJet, aircraft Lessor Celestial Aviation has decided to withdraw its insolvency application against the airline. SpiceJet informed NCLT that the $30 million payment dispute with the lessor has been settled outside of court. Meanwhile, shares of pharma major Alchem Labs plunged over 14% in early trade today. This after reports suggested that the Income Tax Department found tax evasion worth 1,000 crore rupees. The report highlighted that the company made fraudulent deductions for its Sikkim manufacturing operations. However, the company issued a clarification categorically denying any of these allegations and rumors on the alleged tax evasion. And India's per capita monthly household consumption expenditure has more than doubled in 2022-23 compared to 2011-2012. This according to the NSSO's latest consumer expenditure survey. The survey also found that the average per capita expenditure per month stood at slightly above 3,700 rupees, while the figure stood at almost 6,500 for urban India. Speaking to CNBC Awas, Niti Ayog's CEO, BVR Subramaniam, claimed that the survey indicates that poverty in India has fallen to 5%. Well, with that, it's time now for a short break. But coming up, Reliance Foundation launches Vantara, touted to be the world's largest zoo and India's first of its kind animal rescue and rehabilitation center at the conglomerate's Jamnagar refinery complex. An interview with Anant Ambani coming up next. Welcome back. You're watching Business 360. A quick check at all the global headlines. Russian army launched attack drones and missiles targeting Ukraine at the war entered the third year. Ukrainian President Zelensky has claimed that 31,000 soldiers have been killed since Russia's invasion. Ukraine's defense minister has warned that the country was losing territory because of 50% of the weapons promised by the West were arriving late. And U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said today that negotiators have reached an understanding on the contours of a potential ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu said that a ceasefire would only delay Israel's planned assault on Rafah. Senior Hamas officials Sami Abu Zuri said that Netanyahu's comments cast doubts over Israel's willingness to secure a ceasefire deal. And the South Korean government has given a 4-day deadline to doctors who are on strike to return to work. It has threatened them with the license suspension and indictment. About 9,000 medical interns and resident doctors have stayed away from the job since last week in protest against the government's plan to raise medical school admissions by nearly 65%. They claim that an improvement in their pay and working conditions should be top priority for the government. The move has severely impacted hospitals and emergency health services. And big win for former President Donald Trump at the South Carolina Republican primary. He defeated rival Nikki Haley in her home state, marking his fourth straight victory in the primaries and moves closer to clinching the Republican nomination. Haley vows to stay in the race despite losing by a big margin. Well, coming back home, Reliance Foundation has unveiled Vantara, touted to be the world's largest zoo and India's first of its kind animal rescue and rehabilitation center at the conglomerate's Jamnagar complex. Vantara translates to Star of the Forest. Reliance Industries director Anant Ambani is spearheading this ambitious project with a vision to make it instrumental in global conservation efforts. Speaking to CNBC Awaz's Anuj Singhal, Anant Ambani spoke more about Vantara, his passion project.
हमने ये पूरा एक सेवालय बनाया है। यहाँ खाली जानवरों की सेवा होती है, हाथियों, अलग अलग प्रजाति के जानवर की सेवा, रेस्क्यू सेंटर बनाया है और हाथी का एक कैंप, हाथी रेस्क्यू सेंटर बनाया है। यहाँ हमारे पास लगभग 200 से ज़्यादा हाथी हमने रेस्क्यू करके लाए हैं और जानवरों में हमने लगभग 20 से 25 हज़ार जानवर रेस्क्यू किए हैं। यहाँ 100 से अधिक अलग अलग प्रजाति के जानवर हमने लाए हैं। दुर्लभ प्रजातियों का भी हम संरक्षण करते हैं।
देखिए, मैं एक चीज़ कहूँगा, भले ही आप इसको नहीं मानते हो, आप पूरे पैशन से कर रहे हो, लेकिन ये तो इस समय इस दुनिया में जहाँ कार्बन क्रेडिट्स और जीरो कार्बन का इतना चल रहा है, ये तो आपके लिए एक आगे जाके बहुत बड़ा बिजनेस साइड ऑफ व्यू से भी बहुत आपके लिए कार्बन क्रेडिट में एक लॉटरी बन सकती है।
ये तो हम खाली जैसा आपको कहा सेवालय है, यहाँ में बिजनेस का नहीं सोचना, आप तो बिजनेस चैनल से है, बट ये सेवालय का मौका बहुत कम लोगों को मिलता है। भगवान ने हमें चुना और माताजी और पिताजी का आशीर्वाद रहा, इसीलिए हम ये सब कार्य कर रहे हैं। इसमें कोई बिजनेस एंगल नहीं लाना है, ना तो हम इसे, बल्कि फाउंडेशन जरूर मदद करता है, फाउंडेशन के बिना कुछ नहीं होगा। ये ट्रस्ट है, हमारे ट्रस्टीज है और इसमें बट हमें कोई बिजनेस के साथ जोड़ना नहीं, ना तो इसे हम मनोरंजन के लिए इसका इस्तेमाल करेंगे, ना इसे हमेशा हम एक नॉन प्रॉफिट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, कोई मुनाफा के लिए नहीं, खाली जानवर का सेवा के लिए रखेंगे।
Well, Vantara, or Star of the Jungle. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Business 360. More news and updates will continue right here on CNBC TV 18.